I guess we have to say hello to anyone that might be watching.
Yes, hello. Hello, Joel.
Big hello. Hi, Robert. Hi there.
So there could be somebody there. There might be nobody there.
Well,
who knows?
No one there. Let's go to chat. There we go.
I think.
So we're just waiting for some questions, I guess.
Or just some general banter. So, banter. Have we done any playing
Here we go.
This recording since lockdown?
Have we done any playing before the recording?
What's it since March?
Yeah, what's it like?
Joel and I, we were just talking. And we both got the same device in our room where we're streaming,
this is very good actually.
Which is
very good. Yeah.
Which is a special stand on which to put our instruments, because we both discovered that if the instrument is out of its case, then you're much more likely to take it out and actually play it, and practice it.
That's very true.
It really works.
Yeah, I mean, I actually found instead of kind of doing these big chunks of practice, that because it was just laying around in the room ready to go, I just pick it up for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and play. And so I was doing it more that way. I was kind of just playing every now and again for quite short amounts of time, which actually felt really good. Maybe is the way forward. I don't know. I always used to think of practice as a kind of big mission, and actually it doesn't need to be. I mean, you could have the stand, you could have your music out, and you could just like literally look at one passage for like 10 minutes and then put it down and carry on doing whatever you were doing before.
But when you say a big mission, one of the things which I've been thinking about, because I've been doing a lot of teaching in this time, which I do anyway, but there's been much more bigger focus on the teaching.
Hang on a second. I'm being disturbed by my daughter.
You're in demand. Are we going to meet her? I haven't met her.
This is live chat, so yeah.
Hope we'll meet her later.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that.
It's bedtime. It's bedtime. You got a live chat to me, she's saying. Is I realised that my whole approach to practicing is so different from when I was young, a student. I mean, some of our colleagues in LCO are kind of like next generation, and I think they have a very different relationship with instruments and with practice from when you get older. I mean, how old are your kids, Joel?
3.5. So they're right at the beginning of everything. Yeah.
Did you find that having kids that then your approach to practicing changed at that moment?
Well, in the same way that I was just talking about it, which I suddenly didn't have 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, or a big session in the morning. I had to literally be very focused and in fact just literally focus on the kind of sections of the music that I just needed to practice and nothing else. So
isn't that how practice ought to be, though? It's taken having kids to realize that actually we've been practicing wrongly for the last 20 years.
I think you're totally right, Robert. Yeah, I think that's right. I think I always used to think of it as a like I said, as a big mission, but it's silly. It's really silly, because you don't need to once you're out of college and into the profession, I think you can sort of streamline your work much more. And yeah, you're right. It took me having kids till I realized that.
But I think that then what I take from that and then try and offer my students is that actually the only reason to practice anything is basically to get it better. I mean, a little bit of practicing might be to maintain what you can do and just make sure you don't lose it, but to get things better. And I think a lot of students simply don't realize that. It's a kind of you grow up with when you're little, it's kind of the thing that you have to do, the chore you have to do, rather than realizing actually it's actually can be very exciting because something is kind of this level and you can see a way to get it to that level. You just have to know how to get it so to get it all going. Four excited viewers on Facebook. Well, we're very pleased to hear that you're there.
Yeah.
And we hope you don't switch off, within the next 2 seconds.
And 2 on YouTube.
We'll try and keep you entertained.
We've got 6 people altogether.
We're talking about practicing. I mean, that's enough to turn anybody off, isn't it? Especially when we're both lying and saying that we have been doing some over the last few months, and of course we haven't been doing any. The joy of not having to practice.
But actually, that is, I mean, that is another good point. Like when you haven't got anything to practice for, at our stage in our careers, it does things a bit tricky, doesn't it? In a way, especially if you've got so much other things going on, like family life and. It is kind of the motivation to actually find something to practice is, I found, quite difficult, you know.
Our middle child, Noah, wrote us a piece for my wife and me to play. He's been composing non-stop. And he composed this piece and then put on a series on YouTube, Echo Chamber series, with his friends and his aged parents playing as well. He insisted that we learn his piece, and actually that was a wonderful motivation to learn a brand new piece of music, which I loved getting to know it. And then actually Noah wasn't here with us; he was with my parents,
right?
So we had to have conversations about it on the phone, and then we did it when we videoed it for his series, and it was a deeply rewarding thing to be a part of, and quite surprising. It wouldn't have come about apart from lockdown. And he wrote pieces for his friends, and one of his friends, who actually by almost coincidence I conducted a concerto with in Oxford. It was just a few days before lockdown, and we weren't sure if this concert was going to go ahead, and we went ahead. We did this concert. He played Tchaikovsky concerto, and this pianist Thomas Kelly, he's at the Royal College, fantastic young pianist, and he gave a talk. He won a competition in Poland over the summer, and he talked, and he said he was being interviewed afterwards on Facebook, which I just happened to see, and he said that thank you to Noah Max and for giving me the opportunity to perform during lockdown and actually prepare all the pieces that I played in this competition and now gone and won with. He said it was the most amazing experience to have that goal. So yes, Joel, I agree with you. Not having that goal is tricky, but it's meant that things have happened in a different way. Yeah,
but that's I can totally understand that. You know, just you need a kind of portal in a way to like to the kind of practice area, which you had. I mean, yeah. Have we got any more questions? Let's have a look.
Well, one of the questions was, how is it playing with our colleagues again?
Yeah. I missed that one. Yeah.
I'm not sure if our dear viewers are going to be aware that Joel flew from Berlin to London specially for this concert, and then is now back again.
That's true. It's true. It felt very, I felt like, I don't know, it was kind of racy coming all the way over just for one concert. But
so you arrived on Tuesday morning?
I did, yeah. I flew really early Tuesday morning, rehearsed the whole day Tuesday, and then we did the concert on Wednesday.
And you went back Wednesday night, Thursday morning?
No, Thursday morning, yeah. Mm-hmm. Very quick visit. But I have to say, actually, I loved it. It was great. I actually loved playing in St. John Smith Square again, because it's been so long since I played there. And we used to play there a lot with LCO. And it's been a long time and particularly for me personally, it's been even longer. So I love being back there. And
there is a really great sound there. It's a really natural sound.
We talked about that. Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about the acoustic there. Yeah. And it's really special, isn't it? I agree.
Yeah. When we used to play our LCO concerts, there used to be slightly too many musicians on the stage, and it was, all a bit of a huddle. And I actually really like that, because one of the exciting things about just being in the middle of LCO with this very, very vibrant musicians around you, just going for it. It's incredibly energizing and exciting. And I think that's what communicates itself to our audience. I mean, I hope it does.
Very true.
It is really exciting being in the middle of it. And at St. John's, because you are almost forced to be close together when you're on the stage, then you really get that buzz. There's a question from Gary. Hello, Gary. It says, how are you finding playing spaced out in the room with social distancing? Must be a very different and challenging experience, which is kind of the opposite of what we would normally be doing at St. John's, because it was distance. We arrived to rehearse on Tuesday, and our chairs have been put out at the spaces which it needed to be, and our music stands and everything, and the recording engineers were getting their microphones ready. So everything was preordained. One thing which clarinet Mark Vanderveel said about 2/3 of the way through the rehearsal process is, everybody, I thought that with this distance, that the hard thing was going to be really playing together with everybody. And actually that wasn't the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing was listening, was building an aural awareness of what's going on at great distance around you, and trying to imagine that it was happening close, and then relating your playing to that in the way that you would do if everybody was close. Because I think it's not obvious to non-musicians or whoever, or even musicians, but actually this thing about lockdown has meant that we've realized that it's all very well doing things over Zoom, but it's actually, when you play, you make things vibrate in the air. And that's not what happens across a computer screen, I'm afraid, much that I'm looking forward to seeing this evening's concert. But when you don't get that physical sensation of the vibrations coming, I sit next to Joel when we're doing this, and when you don't get the direct vibrations from his viola towards you, and feeling that and hearing it and responding to it over a screen, you can't get that. So it was such a thrill to get at least, 3/4 of that at 2 meters distance, whatever we were, in St. John's, playing again with our friends.
Yeah, that's right. I was initially quite shocked when we began the rehearsal. I was suddenly not panicking, but I was very aware of, suddenly we had, it's going to be difficult anyway, rehearsing a work like the septet, for example. There's difficulties in that anyway, just in a normal rehearsal, but then to suddenly have this extra layer of difficulty, it was kind of challenging, definitely. I the first 10 minutes, I was really swimming around, trying to.
I think the first 10 hours I was swimming around.
Just trying
I'm
to
still
locate,
swimming.
like you said, the sound, like creating this aural, kind of bubble. That was really challenging because we were so far apart. Some of the players were really, really long way away, and yeah, you're absolutely right. It was very, very difficult in that sense.
So normally, with Beethoven's septet, which I played a few times before, but not that often, you would normally be particularly paying the difference in timbre and intonation between woodwind instruments and between the wind instruments and the string instruments. And so that's something you have to deal with anyway, and there's a certain amount of space between you. But then in this instance, it's not only dealing with the difference in timbre, but the difference in distance between the players, and trying to get the information that you need, the oral information that you need, which might be coming from a very, very far, and it might be essential information that probably, with a microphone like here, right in front of you, to a listener, you think, well, why can't you hear that? But actually, when it's 18 meters away, it's and you're busy playing, you've got the sound, your own sound right under your ear. It's very difficult. So
and quite often with intonation, for example, it's not simply that you're playing out of tune or someone's playing out of tune. It's actually balancing the chord, isn't it? In the harmonic structural sense, it's having the right notes at the right kind of volume within that chord, and that was definitely a lot harder when you're further apart, because you lose that sense of awareness of whether the third needs to be more prominent or less in the chord. So we
could ask that question. We could answer that question was by asking the recording people and say, well,
that's right,
it's okay, and they just, oh yeah, it sounds great from here, which is comforting, but you don't know if you would think, if you were out there, do you think it would be great? So the usual sort of musician self-doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question.
Yes, well, there's a few.
Joel, do you ever have issues taking a viola on airplanes? Actually, I've never ever had a problem. I have to admit, I've never had a problem. Although I do, no. Although I do. I am very aware of it, and I'm very careful in a way. Like I have a real tactical plan whenever I have to check in, for example, or go to the gate and get onto the plane. So I made sure, for example, I bought the smallest viola case I could possibly find. So it's a very snug fit, and it looks more like a violin, I guess, on my back. And I'm just very careful with hand luggage and things like that. it's something I do kind of plan, and I am aware that I hear that the other people have problems. So I always try and sort of think about it, and try and get away with it, I guess. Often.
Do you? We needn't mention names, but do you choose your airline with care?
Yes. I mean, I never fly with Ryanair. Never ever.
I mean,
if I can help it.
By repute, they're not very keen on hand
No,
luggage and violins, and let alone violas.
Actually, you do have to buy it. Actually categorically says in their small print that you do have to buy another seat for a musical instrument, such as a guitar or violin. You actually have to purchase another seat. So they can stop you at the gate or when you're checking in. And so I just try and avoid that, because obviously then it would be like having a cello, and it would be very expensive to fly anywhere.
Well, this is where traveling with LCO is such a great pleasure for me, because Step, our wonderful orchestra manager, there's always a cello seat organized. So there's me, and there's be sitting next to my cello seat. And it means that I'm bound to have at least half a peaceful flight, because my seat partner isn't gonna be talking to me all the time. And it sometimes means that you have to go on the plane earlier, so you just because it can be a bit pushing through the whole cabin with the cello can be a bit of a pain. But the only way, I mean, you have to book a seat, and there is no way around that. So if it's a trip that I'm organising myself, yes, it gets rather expensive. But if it's an orchestra trip, it's what the parameters are. And if I'm extremely hungry, there's always another meal on offer.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah.
I've always thought about that.
Or even if
two bad meals don't make one good meal, though, do they?
Yeah, more. Yeah, less is more, as they say. Yeah. Was there another question
about instruments? We were asking about natural horns, and somebody was also asking about. Maggie says, "I know you're not using period instruments, but are you going to be playing this concert in a period style to which Beethoven would have been familiar?" That's a really good question.
It's a very good question.
I think we almost didn't talk about that issue at all. I was very interested to be playing with the natural horns, which I just love the sound they make. And interested that the natural horns, and they're playing at A440, which is a normal modern, what we consider to be a normal modern A. So we weren't playing it at a low pitch, and there they are playing natural horns, but at the normal pitch. And nobody even discussed what pitch we were going to play at. But of course, on modern instruments, we would be playing on a normal pitch. I think LCO's style, such as it is we don't go for bundles of vibrato. We go for bundles of energy and excitement. We try, and engagement. But I think, I didn't talk about vibrato once with Stacey, and of course we're playing the same notes in unison octaves. I mean, when we are playing much of the time, if both of us use a lot of vibrato or use some vibrato, the sound gets very distorted immediately. It goes out of tune and it sounds horrible. So typically we won't use that much vibrato, and we will both articulate very cleanly and clearly, and with a lifted, quite a lifted classical style. Yes, we will use some vibrato, and I am playing on steel strings. But I think it's just an interesting blend. We're certainly not going for a contemporaneous Beethoven sound, but I think we're not going for a high octane sort of 1987 sort of international concert tour sound either. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
I think because of the natural horns, we automatically, as musicians with good senses and hearing, we would automatically kind of, especially in the sextet, for example, we would definitely feed a lot off them, wouldn't we? Like in their sound and the way that they express themselves when they play. So it would. it would be crazy for us to be playing very romantically with these really pure sounding natural horns. I think we just wouldn't do that. So in a way, we naturally kind of head towards that more classical approach just because we are playing with natural horns.
Well, if you just joined us recently, hello, I'm Robert, and here's Joel. We're both musicians in London Chamber Orchestra, and we're going to be playing lots of Beethoven later this evening for you. We're playing Beethoven's septet and Beethoven's sextet. Although interesting, you should count the number of people who are playing when we play the sextet, because it's quite what you expect for various reasons. You could ask us about that if you want to. We'll tell you. So anyway, so welcome to this live question and answer session. If you've got any questions, do send them along on whatever forum you're using, and we'll endeavour to answer them. A very, very musical question here from an actual person. Was what lockdown hobbies have you found yourself filling your time with?
Oh gosh, blimey.
Child mind, Joel.
Yes, I was about to say. In my case, I became a full-time father, I guess, because my wife was still working and I suddenly wasn't working. So I just took on all of the childcare, and of course there was no nursery or there was no childcare apart from with me. So I was just plunged into this very different kind of life than I had before, which initially was very challenging and a little bit scary, I have to admit. But after a few weeks, I found my feet and actually started really enjoying spending that time with them and coming up with interesting things to do and how to occupy them. And so that was my sort of hobby, was reflecting on fatherhood and trying to get better at it. I think.
So now you're a master now. You've got your degree.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I definitely do feel that I improved. I improved, as you would if you were practicing or whatever. I just got better at it. And as a result,
shorter and grayer since I last saw him. As a result,
that's why I keep it short, to keep the grey bits. Keep the grey bits away. What about you, Robert? What did you get up to when you were?
I could see that this was going to go on for a little bit, and I immediately made quite a list of things that I thought this is an opportunity to do them. I organised all my recipes, and then cooked my way through a lot of them to entertain the family which was here, and that was great fun. I have there were a couple of pieces sitting around, which are in manuscript, piece of music by composers, one by Gordon Jacob and one by Elizabeth Lutyens, two English composers. Which I've been meaning to deal with for some time, and I spent the time putting them onto the computer and getting them so they're hopefully going to be published, because I just think it's so important that good music is available. It's in the domain, the public, and I just can't bear it when things you can't find that because it's only in manuscript, or no, the estate won't let you have that, and this music which is hidden. These are pieces that I've been involved with and performed, and I just would like to see them out there in the public. So are they cello pieces? No, or one is a piece for string orchestra with a solo string quartet by Gordon Jacob, and it's really good. It was recorded once, and then I conducted a performance about 2 years ago, and it's really good. And it's only in manuscript form. And the other was a very unusual piece for two cellos and narrator. And it was written from one of my cello teachers, and the poetry was written by her sister. And it's been performed over the years by a couple of other people, but I've given it lots of performance, and it's really close to my heart. And it's sitting there in jumbled up manuscript and not comprehensible. And I spent the time, you go through every note. I know what this note is, and I know what this poetry is trying to say, and it needs to be the different sources. And it was really interesting. One of the things is that I had a type. There was the manuscript, and then there was a copy of the manuscript, and then it turned out there was another copy of the manuscript by a copyist, and then there was the text. The poet, my cello teacher's sister, had sent me a typewritten text of the poetry, and then I discovered another typewritten text of it, which I assumed was the same one photocopy, but it wasn't. It was actually different. It was different. And then I discovered a third copy typed of the poetry from her great niece, who sent me a copy. So this poor poet must have spent her life typing out on a typewriter new copies of her poetry. I mean, I can't work out why. And they're all they've all got slightly different punctuation.
They're very different. Are they very different?
No. They're very similar, but there are a few differences, and it's just understanding the artistic process in a intense way. And so there have been various interesting things that I've been able to do. And I have to say, I don't think I've been bored for a minute.
Wow. Yeah. Me neither.
I have never been bored. I have missed all sorts of things. I went to the theatre a couple of weeks ago. I went to the Bridge Theatre and saw 2 Alan Bennett one-woman shows in an hour and 10 minutes. And it was absolutely amazing to be back in a live performance space. I have really, really, really missed.
How many people were there? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, it was full in the sense that they'd removed all the seats that couldn't be used. Seats were grouped in 2s and 3s, and you could only book those ones. And they'd physically removed the seats. So I suppose it was at third capacity or something.
Wow.
Very enthusiastic audience. But I thought, at the end, I thought, well, there's going to be kind of like an embarrassing trickle of applause. And there wasn't. There was tumultuous applause.
Yeah,
of course. Audience.
Of course,
it was just, to be back. And I'm just so upset that the prom concerts, which I was delighted went ahead, but if only they could have had a live audience, I think the BBC should have stepped up to the plate.
Yeah, I think that was a chance missed, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was. The Albert Hall was all up for it. Believe me.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
and
it could have kind of shown the way forward, couldn't it? It could have been a real first, and people could have learned a lot from them doing that. Actually, yeah. Shame.
You should just say if you joined us recently to the live feeds of our chat. Say where we are and who we are. So I'm Robert. I'm principal cellist of the London Chamber Orchestra, and this is my colleague Joel.
Hi there, everyone.
Hi everybody. We're about to do this live stream with lots of Beethoven.
Should we go back a little bit on the thread, because I think we might have missed a few. Oh, look, there's a question from Janet, and she says, Do you have any horror stories of a tour or a concert?
Any
disasters? Of course we
do, but we're not going to tell you about them. Far too embarrassing.
That's true. That's true.
I bet Joel's got some.
I have got a few actually that immediately spring to mind. I mean, they're not really that bad, but I do remember. My first time ever playing at the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. I was on tour with an orchestra, and we were sort of going from place to place, and I stupidly put my passport in my viola case, which went on the truck which was being driven to Amsterdam. We were flying, so of course I got to the airport and didn't have my passport, so I couldn't fly with the orchestra. And long story short, but
did you get there?
I eventually got there.
You blagged your way across the border.
I can't remember. It was awful, but I literally got to the Concertgebouw at 7:25, and the concert was at 7:30, and I didn't have. I didn't have any of my frack, my tails, my concert clothes. So I came in and I was just given some by the orchestral manager. I don't know where he'd found them from, but they were totally the wrong size. Huge, great big jacket, really baggy, big trousers, and no shoes at all. So I had to. So my very first time playing at the Concertgebouw, I just walked on
barefoot
in my socks, my black socks, and
didn't slip, I hope.
I was sweating, and I literally for about 4 or 5 hours I'd just been, on this crazy trip to try and get there. But I did get there, and I did play, and so I'll never forget that. That was kind of that was very early in my career. So that was a real a lesson, to be a little bit more switched on with these things.
Which I'm sure you've lived up to ever since. I've had a few LCO experiences. One was actually at St John Smith Square, where we're doing our concert, the Beethoven concert was recorded. I remember one concert we had rehearsal 2:30 to 5:30, concert 7:30. Went out for a bite to eat with the crew after the rehearsal. Got back at about 5 to 7. and unpacked my tails and realized I didn't have a white shirt. I had everything else, no white shirt, and I was wearing a sort of a blue check shirt. I mean, no way, not even with lots of chalk, couldn't do anything with that. And so I thought, what the hell am I going to do? And I sort of apologized to Chris, and he said, don't worry, Robert. He said, we've all done it. But anyway, that was very nice of him and made me feel a bit better, but wasn't a solution. And we were actually changing. We couldn't use the changing rooms at St. John's. We were changing at an office block just across the way. And I looked at the security guard, and he was wearing a white shirt. And I went up to him. I said, excuse me, excuse this question. Would you mind? Can I have the shirt off your back, please? He looked at me like I'd gone mad. And he said, I explained it to him. And he said, sure, fine. So I did.
Really?
It was about 4 sizes too small. Couldn't breathe. But he did lend me his shirt. And of course, at the end of an LCO concert, it's very exciting, and we all get very excited, and it's very hot and sweaty. So this shirt turned into a rag.
Oh God!
I had this dripping rag. I said, I'll clean it for you. I'll take it home. I'll drop it off tomorrow. He said, don't worry. He said, I've dealt with worse things in my life. So, but I felt so awful returning this sopping wet white shirt.
Yeah, of course you did. Yeah.
So that was one little adventure. There've been others.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can
these
think
things
of more.
happen. Keep you on your toes.
Hey, so we've got hi to someone from Florida.
Oh, that's a long way.
Welcome. I fell in love with the LCO through the Virgin Classics LCO2 Elgar Vaughan Williams record. That string sound is amazing. Did either of you play on that record? I didn't actually.
No,
I think that was before my time.
Can't you see we're far too young? Well, some of us are far too young. No, it is a wonderful recording. I've heard it as well, and it is fantastic.
Right.
The early LCO recording is really absolutely tremendous. Actually, funny enough, the Vaughan Williams has just been re-recorded on the LCO's newest release. We did a concert, and we did the Tallis Fantasia and the Sook Serenade and Vorjak Serenade, and that was a concert at Cadogan Hall, which was recorded. And actually, I particularly enjoyed playing the Vaughan Williams. I absolutely loved the sensation, the feeling of playing that piece. And I was actually very happy that was recorded. I really enjoyed that performance. Chris was conducting, and my stand partner Rachel Lander was really giving it her all. And it's so inspiring that when you got this great, that string sound that you talk about. It's just, and being right in the thick of it is really, really exciting. So that's very good.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was a boy, I must have been 14, 15. I found a CD, my dad's office, just laying around, and it was LCO. It was a Mozart Symphony Concertante with Chris playing, I think, maybe with his brother Nigel. Was that possible? Yeah. No, maybe not. Anyway, I can't remember. But that was one of the first. It's such a memory, sort of putting that on and listening to that, and that was my first sort of experience of the LCO, and so I knew all about the LCO and throughout my studies, and so then when I finally got a chance to play with the LCO when I left college, it felt like a real full circle, because that was the first real CD recording that I'd kind of got interested in classical music, and there I was then actually working with the same orchestra sort of 10 years later or so.
I think it's move on, things hand on to the next generation. It's nice.
A
message from LCO saying that the Elgar Vaughan Williams recording is being re-released next year. So if you didn't catch it the first time around, you can catch it again. You can catch it later. And actually, I think a lot of the early LCO recordings are about to be re-released because we've got an anniversary this year. How old are we? We're 100. We're 100 this year.
Gosh.
Joel, you don't look it. You look 120.
Thanks, Robert.
Some of us look 100. It's 100 years. 100 years this year since the LCO. But the reality is that orchestras change. But there are one or two people who have been playing with LCO
a long time.
since, basically all the time in its present incarnation.
And,
And we're not necessarily there all the time, but any of us. But tremendous loyalty to
yes.
Yeah. There's another question from Gary,
Yeah,
Gary
I
says,
saw
have
that
you
one.
noticed that the digital media compresses the sound to reduce dynamic range? And has this been a problem? If so, now it's a good question, but it depends if you're talking about things like Zoom chat and teaching and working and making music on Zoom, or if you're talking about generally recording. I mean, I find that when it comes to recording and listening back in general, I hear many more things than I do in real life. So sometimes it's a bit embarrassing because it's just, you know, much crisper than you ever expect. But as far as the sound goes for working with music online during lockdown, I was handed a solution, a free solution on a plate, which was to use Zoom for the visuals and a program called Source Connect for the sound. And Source Connect is a kind of a broadcast quality online sound program, and you can use the two together. And as long as you've got enough bandwidth, you get a very good result. And I've done teaching with just Zoom sound, and with Source Connect. There are other sound programs as well, and the better sound has made my teaching, I would say, actually really quite pleasurable, because I can actually hear what my students are doing, and I can communicate with them very directly through their headphones. You have to use headphones, and we can actually have an ongoing, almost real-time conversation about what's going on. And my students have really progressed wonderfully well, and it's worked out much better, but only because of the increased quality of sound that's provided. It's very challenging using Zoom or Facebook or these sorts of sound options for music, because they don't really work. They're designed for speech.
Yeah, I've had exactly the same experience. I did some online teaching very early on in the lockdown, and it was awful. I mean, because of this compression and this, you just can't hear anything. And like Gary says, everything sounds kind of the same volume. It's very hard to tell what's going on. But then I also found this outside source for the audio, and it's completely different. As you say, it works much better. So that's my only experience of this compression with digital platforms that Gary mentions. Yeah.
Another question here: do you approach playing chamber music with wind instruments differently than playing with strings? Honest answer?
I guess no. I mean, no, in terms of, I mean, obviously, in the rehearsal, there are many things that are very different when there are wind players involved, in terms of blending the sound and finding the right, as we were talking about before, the right kind of expression to match the sound of the wind instruments. And things like intonation is very different. So during a rehearsal, for sure, there are loads of sort of things that you focus on that maybe you wouldn't focus on so much with a string quartet, say. But when you're approaching it, I don't think us would see it any differently. Chamber music is just chamber music. So.
I think one thing which occurs to me is, well, if I speak to Merrick, our principal bassoon, and we've been speaking every week in a lovely LCO Grumpy Old Men group each week. We've been having a chat. Yep, online. It's been very nice. I've really enjoyed it. And one of the points Merrick makes, who was formerly principal bassoon of the Philharmonia, is he says, you know, for a bassoon player doing what he does, he just feels so grateful. He says it's absolutely the best possible thing you can do as a bassoon player is to play, you know, in the wind section of one of the great orchestras of the world, and this is your repertoire. This is your natural habitat. I mean, yes, there's wind quintet as well, and there might be a certain amount of solo bassoon, and there might be this and that and the other. Wind band, you know, but as a string player, our perception of music is very different, because I mean, yes, I spent a lot of time playing chamber orchestra repertoire in LCO, and a certain amount of symphony orchestra repertoire in other places, but only a certain amount, and conducting whatever. But I, you know, my bread and butter music would be 15 however many string quartets of Beethoven, and 60 string quartets of Haydn, and the 10 great Mozart string quartets, as well as all of the others, and the Schubert string quartet. So this we're playing Beethoven chamber music this evening, and you know, my context for that is this enormous wealth of explosion of first Viennese school chamber music, which I'm very fortunate to have a really intimate knowledge of, and from the inside, from having played it. And if you're a bassoon player, you won't have played Mozart's 10-string quartets or Beethoven's string quartets. You know, Merrick will have played all of his symphonies many, many, many more times than I have, and I'm sure a lot of the wind chamber music. It's just and that's bound to give a string player a different perception about what Beethoven's trying to say from a wind player. But I find the different approach, actually, I find it completely refreshing. And I love learning from my colleagues what, you know, what their view is. It's much more interesting than what my view might happen to be. It's finding out what they think. But you do have to find the common ground.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Any more questions coming in? Oh, I've got one here. What is your favorite destination that you've traveled to with playing work, or a tour that stays in the memory? Robert, didn't you do a tour last year? Stays in the memory.
Well, I didn't do the Far East tour.
Oh, you didn't do this? Okay, yeah.
The best tour that LCO's ever done was the Toyota tour last autumn, 3-week tour with about -4 concerts, I think, in the 3 weeks, and absolutely stupendous. And then I think the musicians ended up doing amazing extra music, extra activities along the time. But this tour was apparently, I mean, just legendary already, and we both missed it for different reasons.
Yes, I actually thought you were on them, so
no, I was actually not on that tour.
I was plugging you for yeah. No. I mean, personally, I love going to Japan. Japan is very much my favorite destination.
I've never been to Japan.
Fortunate enough to go quite a few times. I work in another orchestra, the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, and we go there quite regularly, every 2 to 3 years. So I love touring there. The food, the whole experience. It's a very special place.
So, Step, if our orchestra managers, Step, can you please organise a nice LCO tour to Japan, and we can go and eat lots of sushi?
Exactly.
Our next port of call after Beethoven, the next concert in this online series is Schubert. And, this is an interesting kind of connection between the pieces. I think Schubert's octet was written a few years after Beethoven's septet, and in many ways I think Schubert tried to emulate what Beethoven had done. And the interesting thing is, some people think that he actually did a better job. I mean, the Beethoven is a total masterpiece as well, but the Schubert kind of explores the territory in a new way. That's going to be on 19th of November, and I'm extremely excited to look forward to that. And then when it comes to the new year, I think the plan is to do some concerts with live audiences. Well, of course, the tickets will be very hard to come by, so book early. But early done, and fill it out. But it would be it'd be very, very exciting to see you all at our live concerts. I mean, if you can come from Florida if you like. It's quite a long way, but I tell you, it's worth it. I promise we'll play our best.
Robert, are they in St. John Smith Square? Are they in St. John Smith Square?
Yes, we are. I think we're giving our concerts at St. John Smith Square, which is nice. And the other thing which we're working out at the moment is our education project, which is called Music Junction, which I've been involved with for many years. Yes. Some of the schools we work with are actually just around the corner from St. John Smith Square. We work with schools in Pimlico and Westminster Hub, and bringing all different sorts of children from different backgrounds all together to make music together with the orchestra, and it's very exciting. We're working out whether we can deliver that partially online and partially in face-to-face. So we're waiting to see how it's all going to go. But, you know, one doesn't know which way the wind's going to go and how things are going to turn out.
Very true at the moment,
anyway,
isn't it? Yeah.
My guess is that it might be the witching hour, and it might be Beethoven o'clock. Is that right? Do we know?
Oh yes, of course.
If so, I need to start thinking about finding where the broadcast is going to be. Is our team going to tell us? Do you know where it is?
Yes.
Joel? Where can we find it?
It's on just LCO website. Just go straight to the website, and there'll be instructions
LCO
there.
As in London Chamber Orchestra, not any of the other LCOs.
LCO
around.
London Chamber Orchestra. That's right. Yeah.
So www.lco.co.uk/LCO online.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you just ferret around for LCO Beethoven's sextet, you'll find it.
That's right.
And I hope you enjoyed the sextet with 7 people as much as we did. and the natural horns making amazing noises. Amazing.
Oh my gosh, incredible
Genius.
sound.
Genius. Love it. So clever. Makes me feel like an amateur. Well, not what they get up to.
That's very.
Anyway, it sounds like it's time
So,
to go to the concert.
I think it's time.
I hope you've enjoyed it. It's lovely to see you, Joel. Keep well, and I hope to play with you soon and play music and see you everywhere.
See you really soon.
So thank you for joining us.
Take care.
And be well.
Everyone.
Goodbye.